we will have 3 presentations on different aspects, taking into account the assessment of the previous framework and its implementation in Bulgaria, and also then looking more into the future, on discussing the main points in the new EU strategy. In the second panel, we'll look a bit more detailed into sort of the assessment provided by NGOs and different organizations. Here we'll talk about the problems, we'll talk a bit about the successes, and these challenges that are still to be tackled, how different organizations would like these to be tackled in the Bulgarian context. So this is basically the roadmap. We will also have the chance to take questions from the audience here in Zoom, but also via Facebook, because we're live streaming this event through the website of the Standing Roma Conference. So I hope it will be useful for the organizations, but also for those who will ultimately be involved in the preparation of the national framework. And due to the new ideas of the Commission, having this national strategies also designed and implemented with much more, let's say, intense input of civil society organizations, I think this is also a good starting point to basically have the points and remarks, concerns that you have incorporated in the national Bulgarian strategy and voiced today in this debate. So that's basically the plan. This is the idea why this event is both timely and important. I guess we will just move to the first panel. At that point, I will give voice to my colleague here at university, the director of the English Language Center at CU, at AUBG, and a person who is also extremely, friendly, involved with students in all kinds of initiatives, always there when we have an event here at the university, an incredible sort of personality, very positive person, apart from a great lecturer and a linguistic specialist, Sabina Wien. Sabina, please proceed with a bit of self-presentation, I guess, and then also take over the moderation of the first panel, if you can.
Thank you, Magda. You did manage to embarrass me, and I'm gonna do the same with the presenters afterwards. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be in this round. I know some of you. I am following the activities of some of you, and I wanted to share something on behalf of, as a Bulgarian citizen, I wanted to say thank you for all you do. Thank you for helping further the integration of an absolutely integral part of Bulgarian society. And thank you for making aware people who do not belong to the Roma minority about their problems, because it's often difficult to imagine how it is when you're an outsider to a group. Having said that, I would first like to present the panelists, and then I will allow myself to share something which is a little bit more personal. The first panelist in the panel, called What We Have Achieved and Where We're Heading, is Mrs. Violeta Najdinova, and we see that she is here with voice and sound and picture. Mrs. Najdinova is a senior policy analyst at the Open Society European Policy Institute in Brussels. In her work, she examined EU policies and regulations on social inclusion, especially those targeting Roma communities. She's also the co-author of an in-depth analysis of the EU Roma inclusion strategy for 2012-2020. As far as I'm informed, in her talk, Ms. Najdinova will focus on the main points of the above-mentioned analysis report, and she will put an emphasis on her assessment of the earlier EU strategy and her recommendations regarding the upcoming scheme. Welcome, Ms. Najdinova, and we'll talk a little bit later. The second panelist is Ms. Teodora Krumova, and I also see her there. Ms. Krumova is the program coordinator at ℹ Center. As we all know, this is an important Roma organization, and it is based in Veliko Tърново, correct? Beautiful. Besides her practical involvement in project work, she is also the co-author of the education section of the report on Bulgaria's implementation of the earlier EU strategy prepared by Bulgarian Roma NGOs within the framework of the so-called Roma Civil Monitor Initiative. In her talk, Ms. Krumova will present the main findings of the mentioned report. In other words, the achievements and also the drawbacks on Bulgarian educational policies targeting Roma inclusion over the past decade. The third panelist is Mrs. Kirova. We also have her there, right? Mrs. Kirova works as a policy officer at the European Commission representation in Sofia. She's responsible, among others, for the preparation of an annual European semester report for Bulgaria, so-called country story, assessing Bulgaria's performance along a number of socio-economic indicators. This report regularly includes information on the country's progress with Roma inclusion. In her talk, Ms. Kirova will talk about the contents of this year's European semester report with regard to the issue of Roma inclusion. She will also present the main principles guiding the new EU framework for Roma inclusion, as well as the goals that it sets. Welcome, Ms. Kirova. And now the promised a little bit of a personal account of my experience at AUBG in the past 15 years. Yes, I've been working for AUBG, the American University in Bulgaria, for already 15 years, and I will touch upon two areas which, to my understanding, have helped educational Roma integration to a great extent. I'm currently, as Magdalena mentioned already, the director of the English Language Institute at AUBG, and this is the place where the so-called minority project took place between the years 1993 and 2000. What were the contents of the minority project? 2 intensive semesters of English training, levels absolute beginners through intermediate or even advanced. So according to the common European framework of reference for languages, these are the levels B2 to C1. So from A1 to B2/C1 within 2 semesters only. That's quite an achievement. In addition, learners in this program received university admission test preparation. These were back then TOEFL and SAT. 113 students participated in the program, and 1/3 of them were Roma youngsters. The other minorities eligible to for the program were Turkish and Pomak youth. What happened with this 1/3 of 113? Upon completion of the program, from what we know, the majority used English language skills for academic purposes. They were admitted to bachelor's programs in AUBG or other universities in Bulgaria and abroad. After that, some of them continued their education, master's and PhD programs. A smaller part used English as their professional development tool. Back then, the program, as I guess a lot of you know, was funded by the Open Society. Most probably Ms. Najdova knows more than I about the program. Back then, students admitted to the minority program received a full scholarship, which also covered tuition and books, as well as room and board. After the minority program was terminated, the ELI continued to educate Roma youth with the generous support of the Trust for Social Achievement. And I see Mr. Isaev there, and he's most probably able to tell us more about this part of AUBG's involvement in Roma youth education. Within the framework of the University Preparatory Program, the ELI has been helping young Roma people with leadership potential to improve their English to university admission standard. On a personal note, I have met many of them throughout the years, and they went on to study after the ELI. They went on to study at AUBG, and this is how I met them in student clubs, student events, or lectures. I have been really privileged to witness their personal and professional development. And although I was their professor, I have to say I have learned myself a lot from them from their resilience, and also from their devotedness to all kinds of social causes related to the Roma minority and beyond. I am happy to be calling some of them my friends, and I would open a bracket and mention just one name before I close it. Mr. Mustafa Ramadan, who currently works for ℹPrез. This was the LI. Briefly about ABG student clubs. A personal story. Once upon a time, there was a 7-year-old girl, and she met a 20-year-old young lady. They could not communicate with one another because there was a language barrier. The little girl really wanted to get to know better the 20-year-old, and the 20-year-old didn't know how to help her. Years later, the 20-year-old was already 25 and had an idea. This was and is Miss Kayla Whitaker, an AUBG exchange student. She was also a member of the Better Community Club at AUBG. She contacted back then the Better Community Club and said, I want to teach this girl English. And the right environment for this girl was the English Language Institute. So we've been having a scholarship for kids aged 8 through 20, so school age, to become part of the community program, or English language courses for the community, for the local community in Bulgaria. And the little girl really exists. Let's call her Victoria, because she was again victorious. She did enter the program with a scholarship, and she was able to already write postcards to Kayla Whitaker. Currently, we have 7 kids with this scholarship at the ELI, and one of them is a Roma girl, a fantastic 13-year-old Roma girl. Other student clubs are also involved in various ways, and I want to mention one initiative that I'm myself aware of. Some students were mentoring kids in the center initiated by the E3 Navigators project called the Ctrategическа, or for toys and notebooks. And the project was funded by the Trust for Social Achievement, and also supervised, initiated, inspired, and supervised by an ABG professor. His name is Professor William or Bill Clark. ABG collaborates in various ways with Roma organizations representing or acting for the rights of Roma. And I already mentioned ℹRете, and of course we have the Постоянна ромска конференция. Thank you for the live stream. Thank you for listening to me. Now you have the pleasure to be listening to the panelists, and I'm starting with the first one. I would say this is Miss Najdenova. Sorry, I got emotional. Thinking back of these things got me emotional. I can't help it. I'm giving now the floor to Ms. Violette Najdenova to present her talk, Taking Stock of the 2012-2020 EU Roma Integration Strategy. And I'm expecting screen sharing, correct?
Yes, hello for everyone. Here in Brussels is good afternoon, and I guess in Bulgaria it's also good afternoon. It's really, I'm really pleased to meet you all and to be part of this discussion. And thank you so much for inviting me to present the findings of our report, which we published in 2020 last year, but the findings are from the previous years. So yes, let me try to share my screen again, and I apologize if it does take some time, because it's first time for me to do that, because we use different forms in Open Society Foundation. So I don't know, do you see now?
Yes, but we see the Zoom picture, not now we see your presentation. Thank you.
Now, okay. Let me see how this, okay. Is this okay? Is it okay now?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to share the lessons learned and the way forward in the Roma framework from our assessment. And for those who don't know me, although I know a lot of people here, and it's really I'm pleased to meet all the colleagues that we have been working throughout the years and supported in OSF, but also some new faces. So for those who don't know me, I'm Violetta Naidenova, and I work for the Open Society European Policy Institute based in Brussels. I work in Brussels for the last 7 years, and I have been trying to understand what the EU is doing in terms of addressing Roma challenges at EU level, but also at member states level. Previously, I worked in the Open Society Foundations, but in a grants making office, not in a policy advocacy for the EU, but in a grants making office where we gave a lot of grants. And here I want to refer to previous person who talked from which is, sorry, I don't see your name again. But yes, we did funded projects in AUBG in order to enhance young Roma people's language skills in the past. And we moved, unfortunately, to the CEU, to Central Eastern European University, in continuing this program. But this is my previous role of in OSF, more as a grants maker than a policy advocate, which I am now. So allow me to start. So the main findings and how we arrange our reports, which is we started from 2011, and we looked through 2011 and what has been done in terms of achievements, challenges, up to 2020, including last year. So we analyzed those achievements, and we put forward the challenges, and then we prepared the elements and recommendations for the way forward before the new strategic framework to be adopted by the Commission. So in terms of achievements, I think we have been very innovative in this. In terms of achievements, putting such a chapter in a Roma report. Why? Because we tend to look usually negatively on what has been done on Roma. We constantly point at what doesn't work well. We forget to say and acknowledge, okay, of course, there are things that need to be improved, but look what we have achieved so far. And that's not little. So I wanted that I emphasize in this, and I would like to make a suggestion for any policy report in the future, that it's also paying attention on this focus. The achievements that we have managed to put forward and find out in the EU is that the EU Roma framework, which was set up in 2011, has really brought Roma in the agenda of politicians, governments, the EU, etc. And that is something undoubtful. Like everyone that we spoke to, stakeholders, activists, have confirmed that. Something also that we emphasize as an achievement is the Council recommendations that we have on Roma in the EU. As you know, we have one in 2013 on recommendations, the Council recommendations on Roma, and there is a newly one adopted in March 2021 on Roma, which I hope and I believe that the colleague who is representing the Commission will speak about. It's really ambitious in language in comparison with the text before. And I highly advise that everyone reads it and use it as an advocacy tool at national level. What we also have as an achievement is the Roma Week. I don't know how many of you know that the European Parliament, together with the Commission years have organized the so-called Roma Week around the date of 8th of April, International Roma Day, where activists come to Brussels, policymakers come to Brussels, academia, to raise Roma issues, but also to celebrate 8th of April, the International Roma Day. And that has been also something that it wasn't prior to 2011. The European Parliament also passed a lot of resolutions on Roma. And I think that should also be acknowledged. The texts need to be looked at because there is no innovation in terms of what Roma needs. I think the Parliament has repeatedly said the same to be done. The problem is, of course, as we will see, is at member states level and what the Commission is putting forward and suggesting to do from an EU perspective. Something else that we also want to acknowledge is the European Commission initiatives and policies and funding and things that it has put forward. I don't know if you're aware of the Roma Civil Monitor. It's a pilot project that was suggested by the European Parliament, VP Kinga Göncz from Hungary, and she's former MEP. She's no longer MEP, unfortunately, but she has suggested it from the Parliament. The Commission has taken it up, and this is the first project which is trying to follow the monitoring of the Roma framework at national level from civil society point of view and from academic point of view. And CEU, together with number of organizations, have produced wonderful reports in terms of what works and what doesn't work. The Commission is continuing this project also this year. Now, in terms of EU funding, there is also a lot that has been done. The Commission has put forward so many funding mechanisms that are out there, and this project is part of Erasmus+. So it's fantastic to see that these initiatives that the Commission put forward in terms of EU funding mechanisms are used by governments and by different partners, also academia. So it has to be acknowledged that the Commission has done a lot in the area of EU funding, trying to mainstream Roma within the funding mechanisms that it has, such as Erasmus+. I also would like to mention that we have 3 infringement proceedings. So I know how much you're aware of are the infringement proceedings. This is an investigation of the European Commission whether the EU law is kept and implemented properly on anti-discrimination law of the EU. There are 3 infringement proceedings that were launched against Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republic on over Roma school discrimination in education. So these are processes that are ongoing, and unfortunately, because it's a pre-investigation, it is very confidential, so we don't have a lot of information on that public and from the side of the Commission too. What we also mentioned as an achievement is that combating anti-Gypsyism, which has been raised for a long time from many organizations, now it has more focus in terms of policy documents, but also funding in the Commission. It has also drawbacks, but definitely more. When it comes to platforms to give a Roma voice more opportunity, we have the Roma platforms that are organized every year, and we have national platforms as well. They give sufficient funding for it. We have also regular consultation meetings between the European Commission and civil society organizations, mainly in Brussels. And not to forget that countries which are part of the enlargement process, the Commission has put also forward the EU Roma framework, that things are aligned in terms of enlargement when it comes to policies for Roma and the EU, what it does on Roma. So this is also very important. We have also 2 reports that came from EU agencies, and this is the Fundamental Rights Agency, which is producing now a lot of reports on Roma and data, which we haven't had before. And I think a lot of people now cite quotes from FRA, from the Fundamental Rights Agency. But we have also a unique report from the European Court of Auditors, which shows in terms of funding and Roma, how much really the funding up to the period that the court looked at the Roma funding used by member states has been used in a way that works for Roma. And that's an interesting report that you can look at if you want to understand whether EU funding has managed to make a difference in the lives of Roma. Moving towards the challenges. There are a number of challenges that we have put forward, but the first one that we find out that is the most important and relevant is the non-binding character of the EU Roma framework. Well, you see, this is a soft EU policy. So it's not a directive, it's not a law that obliges governments. So governments are not obliged to have, you see, an EU Roma framework. However, recommendations is on Roma, is obliging, that I mentioned earlier, is obliging governments to report and to create their own EU national Roma, to create national Roma framework. So on one hand, yeah, it's non-binding because it's a soft tool, it's not a directive. But on the other hand, through the council recommendations, governments are obliged to respond to what the Commission is asking. But still, we want to make an emphasis that unless the priorities on Roma from the side of the Commission become binding for EU governments, we would not see that much progress. That's why we put it at the forefront of the challenges. Now we have the 4 policy areas and the goals: education, employment, housing, and health. When you compare, and you will see that later, what are the goals in education, employment, housing, and health, with, in terms of the 2011, you will see that these are not really goals that you can find out. They're not quantifiable, they're not targets, there are no numbers there that you can compare. Goal like closing a gap between Roma and non-Roma in education, employment, housing. I mean, this is not working. Like, how can you measure whether there is progress or not when there are no any numbers, any targets, anything that you can see and make a comparison with in terms of data? Not mentioning that we have no data in general, which is a big problem. Something that we also find as very important is Roma arts, culture, and history. Well, Roma have been taking part in arts, culture, and history of Europe for decades, from the time that Roma have existed and came into Europe, 13th, 14th century. But somehow this is not mentioned nowhere. You can't find any trace in mainstream big books that Roma have contributed to arts, culture, and history. And they have been part of the wars. They have been part of contributing to the culture and arts. So why Roma are not there? Why Roma contributions are not acknowledged in those books, they're not part of the policies that include arts and culture and history. So this is something that we also want to emphasize on. In terms of governance, we also put forward as a challenge that the EU funding, yes, on one hand is an achievement because we have more EU funding, but if you read the European Court of Auditors report, then they say, okay, there are no data on Roma. So we don't know actually which EU project targeted really Roma and how many Roma it targeted and whether it made that difference on the ground for Roma. You see, so it's very, very difficult to find out that the funding made a difference for Roma from the court's perspective when you don't have the data to compare again. And relating to your funding, there are also a lot of other challenges, especially when it comes to also participation. This is my second point on in terms of governance. Roma don't really participate in decision making in terms of funding, like what funding goes to where and to what when it comes to Roma inclusion. And here we have to emphasize, participation is missing big time, not just from decision making on funding, but in general, decision making on Roma in governments and how things are decided. Having, in a group of people, let's say 100% group of people, 5% of Roma, this doesn't justify Roma participation. So it's important to look at this perspective when it comes to participation of Roma in decision making. Empowerment of Roma, this is also something that we have emphasized, and we as USF try to invest a lot in making Roma more knowledgeable, either through language courses, through university degree support, through any other different levels of skills that Roma need in order to keep governments accountable, but also to participate in decision making. Now, data monitoring and evaluation. I mean, again, when it comes to policy making, and if you want to, if we want to really reach to and see some progress without proper data monitoring and evaluation, it's impossible. And I think that is something that needs to be definitely emphasized in every national strategy, including the Bulgarian one, and especially in education. Another challenge that we put forward is mainstream versus targeted approach. As you know, there is a lot of discussion. What is working better? Is it the targeted? Is it the mainstream? Well, our analysis shows that we need both. We really need both. You cannot having just one and without the other, because if you put Roma in silos, and we have seen that in the past with having just a Roma framework, having just a Roma strategy, but then excluding Roma from the wider policies of governments and the EU, we see that it doesn't work because no one wants to do anything on Roma then. They say, oh, you have your own Roma framework, but that doesn't work. So it's important to put it both, and I will speak about it later more in detail. When it comes to heterogeneity of Roma, we have put forward there that, for example, a lot of the strategies that we had in the past, like in Western Europe, they didn't include EU mobile Roma that go in another member state and work. And they have but we also paid attention on Roma youth, women, people with disabilities, and others, which is very important to pay attention to what kind of focus group we speak about the Roma. Enlargement, yes, there are still a lot of challenges in terms of the enlargement and what needs to be done. And there the Commission needs to be more pressing. We analyzed when it comes to enlargement, because once a country becomes a member state, there are no really pressing mechanism, obligatory mechanism that would press the country when it's in the enlargement process. So countries like Macedonia and others who are part of the enlargement process, they're now required, they're obliged to respond to certain policies, certain targets when it comes to law, legislation, and measures on Roma, because after they join, it's finished. The Commission doesn't have so many tools there to press the member states on this. That's why we put it forward as a challenge. The way forward for the Roma strategy, we put forward a number of suggestions, and this is definitely addressing the non-binding character and see if it can upgrade its status. Coming up with council recommendations for second time in in the EU history of policy making in Brussels. It's really impressive because it's in a way obliging governments to report on Roma and to say what they have done to the Commission and to have national strategies. But it's not gonna be enough. It's not gonna be enough. So we need to look at this and to see what's possible still at EU level when it comes to the non-binding and soft character of the framework. Addressing anti-G. It's very important that stereotypes against Roma are addressed. It's very important that hate speech is addressed. It's very important that hate crime provoked by hate speech, which is usually done by politicians. Bulgaria is in a pre-election period now. So a lot of the far-right politicians are using that to gain votes. This needs to be addressed. And if there is no policy and funding for it, it's not going to work. Roma arts, culture, and history, I already explained why it is important and why it needs to be addressed. I think it is commendable that the new EU strategic framework address Roma arts and culture and history, but not efficiently, not enough. We need much more, and we need definitely funding for that. And we don't see that in this strategy now. And I don't know if we will see it in the national strategy of Bulgaria, for example, or other countries. In terms of governance, we have put forward on recommendations on funding, participation, empowerment, data, the heterogeneity of Roma and enlargement, number of recommendations. So there are a lot. National strategy on Roma, that you look through these elements and see whether you have responded to them efficiently and adequately. I want to definitely put forward here something that is very important to pay attention. These are the new goals for the four policy areas: education, employment, housing, and health. And because we speak about education, I wanted to give you an example. We suggested in our report new goal: ensure access to quality education for all Roma children and increase their enrollment and completion rate in quality integrated schools up to 90%, and in secondary education to 50%. The goal that is in the current EU Roma framework, it says on education, ensure that all Roma children complete as a minimum quality primary school education. Now you can compare the two and see what we have suggested and what's the current one. Now, let's look at the new one. The new strategic framework goal is cut the gap in participation in early childhood education and care by at least half. Now, this is the EU goal, but this is to ensure that by 2030, at least 7% of Roma children participate in preschool. This is the lowest threshold that the Commission suggests to member states. I want to show you also the rest what the Commission is showing. I think probably the Commission will make an emphasis on it in their presentation. The other one is to reduce the gap in upper secondary completion school by at least 1/3.
Violeta, I'm afraid.
Suggesting to ensure that by 2030, majority. We have little time. Okay, how much time I have so I know how
Actually,
to.
it's kind of the time is up, I'm afraid, because
to finish. Okay.
yes,
Okay.
so
I mean, I just wanted. Okay, I understood. I'm going towards conclusion, but I wanted to give you this example so you can understand what was the goal that was in 2011, which is this one. What's the goal we suggested, and what's the goal that the Commission is suggesting currently? Because if you just put a very low threshold for governments and just say, okay, let's put just the 70% of children are in preschool, we shouldn't aim for that. We should aim for 100% because we know anyhow that the government will not reach the 100%. So when you put it lower, the governments will go even lower. That was my point. On employment, similarly, housing, health, etc. So I'm coming here towards my conclusion and recommendations, if you would allow me, Magdalena, just so if we have a new strategy up to 2030, and it targets, and this is only as a included in terms of a single policy, and it's not mainstreamed in the rest of the Bulgarian policies and funding mechanisms, it is not gonna work. It's not gonna work. And if we don't address anti-Gypsyism and stereotypes, this is also not gonna work, because we see the Bulgarian context is very, very special in terms of stereotypes and what the majority thinks about Roma and how Roma are unpopular with voters. So we need to address definitely this. And the Commission adopted this new EU anti-racism plan, which government needs to adopt by 2022. So I hope that it's used in the Bulgarian Roma strategy, and the Bulgarian government would address Roma stereotypes, mean media, employ Roma in institutions. This is my last slide. I just want to put forward that there are two things that we definitely need to pay attention when it comes to also education, because we speak about education. The EU adopted this new EU resilience and recovery plan that provides a great opportunity to address Roma. This is after COVID to address economic gaps, but also to help people after and post-COVID in terms of jobs, education, their lives. Now, the governments need to submit this by April this year. I'm not sure if the Bulgarian government would plan Roma in it. It's essential that Roma are in it. This is a long-term policy that has so much money in it. So my recommendation and our recommendation is that Roma are there. The other big thing is the EU Green Deal, and here I will finish. The EU Green Deal currently doesn't target Roma. The new strategic Roma framework of the Commission doesn't have a single word about the Green Deal and Roma. And when it comes to climate, or when it comes to environmental degradation, we know that Roma hits the most, if not really the hardest. So here, if the Green Deal is not addressing, for example, that every third Roma lives without tap water, 8 out of 10 live at risk of poverty, their Roma are forced to live next to waste dumps, contaminated sites, etc. It's important that Roma are targeted and included in the Green Deal. And this is my last slide. I don't have a thank you slide, because I just wanted to say thank you personally. And I'm trying to stop sharing my screen, and which I don't know how.
It's okay. It's gone.
It's gone. Can you see me?
Yes. We don't have
so that was
a thank you slide either, but we really thank you very much.
Yeah, so this was a presentation. I hope I have provided the most, and sorry that I took a lot of time. Thank you.
Thank you for the details. Very insightful. I'm sure there's a bunch of questions. Maybe we can address them at the end of our panel. From a very large EU perspective, let's turn now to Ms. Teodora Krumova from ℹ Center, and her topic, Roma pupils in the Bulgarian education system in the 2010s, evidence from the Roma Civil Monitor project, and I'm sure that we'll get a lot of data there.
Thank you. I will try to stick to my topic, mainly education, although I'm seduced to touch upon also the at the end, not go into this because it's a really huge topic. I will overview of the achievements and the challenges in education in the last decade. I will share my screen now. Okay, do you see it? Do you see it now? I hope you see it. You see my screen? right?
I can see it, but the view is large. I don't know whether you can zoom out a little.
I have made it full screen.
I think it's okay.
Okay.
Okay. I start with several data. I will try really to be short and stick to the slides, not to take much time. I just put at the beginning a table that has been recently presented in a study which was ordered by the Trust for Social Achievement, but I guess Soumya will touch upon this later. And just to see the comparison between the beginning of decade and the end of the decade. This is data from UNDP in 2011 and the research by Global Metrics in 2019. So you definitely see a change in the school attendance of Roma children and adolescents by the age group. So we see a positive development in this respect. However, the questions here are, to what extent is this improvement due to the educational policies at central and local level? To what extent is it a result of the objective development of the Roma community? Because we see also an objective development in the community. And what is the role of pilot models of civil society organizations and schools for this positive development? So whether it's an objective change or it's also subject to external factors as well, or both. At the same time, the share of students attending schools of predominantly Bulgarian ethnic origin has decreased almost twice. The share of students in schools where there is a concentration of students of Roma origin is increasing. Almost every second child of Roma ethnic origin is enrolled in a school where Roma predominate. And this is again data from the report of the Trust for Social Achievement. So no matter the achievements and the positive development in the educational status of Roma, we see that the other hard issue, the segregation, is getting higher on the agenda. Prevention of secondary segregation and overcoming primary segregation, however, requires strong political will at local, regional, and national level. I tried also to make an overview of the main political developments. I have divided them between before 2016 and after 2016. And the dividing line is the new educational law. The new Public Education Act, it was adopted and it's in force since 1st of August 2016. Adopted 2 articles banning segregation at class level in the ethnically mixed schools and kindergartens. And this is the first time when we have a real act banning segregation at national level. The new Public Education Act also sets state educational standard for civic and intercultural education, which includes almost all the claims of the civil society. This was a long process where the civil society and educational organizations actively participated. And finally, we managed to push for many of the claims that we advocated for. And the third fact is that in 2010 and 2015, the strategy for the educational integration of children and students from ethnic minority was renewed. The main political developments after 2016. Willie already mentioned the Roma Civil Monitoring report. Just to add to this, in Bulgaria, it was carried out by 9 organizations, and the process was coordinated by Center Amalipe. And it analyzed the 3 reports, analyzed the main developments in the period 2017-2020. Significant developments in the mainstream educational system can be marked, and they support inclusive education and educational integration. I have marked some of these changes that are important also for the educational integration. First, there has been a change in the formula for the delegated school budgets. I know that it's a bit specific, but this was one of the big challenges before rural schools and kindergartens. And with this change, they receive better financing for introducing standards for a class and for a school. And this has decreased the disproportion between the so-called elite schools, or schools with a huge number of students, and the disadvantaged schools in the rural areas. Second, there was introduced the requirement for obligatory preschool education since 4 years, and a series of changes for abolishing fees for kindergartens. I wouldn't stop on this because this has been a long advocacy process, where the civil society organizations have been actively involved. This process is still not over because we still have steps to go, but we already made huge steps in this direction. The other achievement is the free transportation for high school students, meaning 8-12 grade, and establishing a mechanism for institutional cooperation for full enrollment in preschool and school education. These were the mainstream political achievements. Speaking about Roma targeted measures, one of the big achievements was the National Program for Support of Desegregation, financed by the state budget. It's not, we do not consider it achievement just for itself, but it's confessing that the issue of segregation exists, and this should be a state policy, because the state has appointed special budget for this program. Of course, here we also have a lot to go, because we need to convince the municipalities and local authorities that they need to be more brave in this direction, but still it's a step. Providing specific funds for schools and kindergartens with concentration of vulnerable students according to the educational status of parents. The educational operational program, science and education operational program, provides targeted support for educational integration within the course under investment priority 3.2. And last but not least, something very important, the government still are afraid of Roma targeted measures. They still prefer not to undertake Roma labeled measures, and one of the examples in this direction is the reaction towards the Roma scholarship program that was financed by Roma Educational Fund. So what is the role of the civil society for the political developments in all this process? The majority of the political developments mentioned above are undertaken after strong pressure by the civil society organizations, or within the political dialogue between the Ministry of Education and Science and the civil society organizations, for example. And I pointed several examples here. First, the anti-segregation texts in the new Public Education Act were adopted after a series of advocacy campaigns by Malepe and other organizations. This was really a hard struggle where we had a small victory. I say small because for now the two texts in the law concern only segregation on the level of classes. It's not allowed to have segregated Roma schools. However, as I mentioned, the government, the parliament, in fact, to be more correct, was not brave enough to make the next step and forbid segregation at school level. And this is our next big advocacy goal. Second, the broadening of the coverage of free transportation for high school students took place by the Trust for Social Achievement and the school network. Every student will be a winner. This is a school network administrated by Malepe, which unites around 300 schools all over the country. This has been also a long advocacy process with several steps where we have been winning step by step more and more achievements. And here we still have some to go. Third, abolishing the fees for kindergartens became a national policy after advocacy efforts led by the Trust for Social Achievement, World Without Borders, and our civil society organizations. And as you know, we are in front of the next elections. Last week we had 8 organizations, education organizations, organized a political debate on education, where 4 of the parties that are given the chance to enter the parliament had to share their platforms on education. And in fact, all of them, they took the engagement to work for abolishing the fees for all children. Of course, these are just promises before elections, so let's see what will happen after the elections, because sometimes promises differ from real actions after. And fourth, the National Desegregation Program was initiated and developed after advocacy campaign of Amalipen Roma Integration Network. This is just some of the examples, but they show that in fact Roma and civil society organizations had really big importance in all these steps. However, what are the challenges ahead? As I mentioned, there is an objective tendency for increase of the educational status of the Roma community. This tendency is supported by mainstream and targeted policies of the Ministry of Education and Science. It steps on successful NGO practices. At the same time, there is an objective process for increasing segregation. White flight of many Bulgarian students result in hardening the problem, no matter that many Roma parents strive to enroll their children in ethnically mixed schools. And we have more and more examples in this direction. Lack of proper policy response to this challenge at local level. And here, the case of Samokov is one example. Of course, we have few exceptions. I don't know if we have time, but we can discuss it later in the discussion. For example, the case of Gabrovo municipality, which decided to close the secondary segregated school in the center of the town and to spread all Roma students there equally to all schools in the town, so that there is no school without Roma students. And this is the real desegregation process. The next important point is that measures at national level are not sufficient enough. As I mentioned, the institutions at national level are not brave enough to take the next steps, which are needed. Bulgarian educational system still does not provide enough opportunity for intercultural education through which to support the preserving of the cultural identity of Roma children and forming tolerance among all children. And the other big challenge that we face since March last year and the beginning of the COVID pandemic is that there is yet no proper answer to digital exclusion for many Roma children. This recently appears to be one of the strongest forms of exclusion. At the end, the recent years have shown that civil society advocacy can change a significant share of educational policy. Without it, many of the policy measures for educational integration wouldn't have taken place. And civil society advocacy is especially strong when it's undertaken together with big number of schools and the support of the local communities, and when it reflects the needs of the schools and the local communities. So, thank you very much. This is the brief overview of the achievement and the challenges ahead. We hope that this would find place in the new Bulgarian Roma strategy if it is prepared in the proper way, because at present the process really doesn't answer the requirements. In fact, it's an ex-ante conditionality or opening condition. How we say it's a real condition in order to start a negotiation for the other strategic documents. So Bulgaria is obliged to adopt a strategy, no matter it likes it or not. And our role as civil society organizations is to make the processes really effective. It's not just made to have any document answer this conditionality, and to reflect the real needs of the ground in the documents. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy later in the discussion to speak more about this. I try to be short.
Thank you very much for this, and altogether for a very, very insightful presentation. Reminding us about challenges as well as successes was really useful. And without further ado, I'd like to give the floor to our third panelist, Ms. Ckoro. She'll be presenting about respecting diversity, fostering inclusion, or EU's 2020-2030 framework for national Roma integration strategies. We're looking into the future.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can see and hear me well. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this discussion. I see many familiar faces we've already met with some of you, in particular in the context of the European semester. I'm a European semester officer at the Commission representation in Sofia, and we've had many discussions over the last years in this context, where we try to meet annually with different stakeholders to discuss issues pertaining to the European semester, and Roma issues and challenges are, of course, one very important aspect in this context. As you may know, the Commission has issued country-specific recommendations to Bulgaria in the area of education, which particularly address the Roma population as well as other disadvantaged groups. And this is among other important aspects that we note in our reports as regards the Roma population, including social and labor market issues, housing, so on and so forth. But today I have the pleasure to give you an overview of the revised and strengthened EU Roma strategic framework for equality, inclusion and participation, which the European Commission adopted on 7th of October, and recently the Council adopted a recommendation. Let me just load the presentation. Could you please confirm whether you see it?
You could try, yeah, once again. I think it works this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does.
You
Thank you.
can also make it full screen if you wish, and then as you wish.
Somehow it wasn't working.
Like that?
I think we can live with that size of the screen, right, Magda?
It's okay. Normally there is this little icon down there with a kind of screen with a stand. Maybe that could be used. It should be fine, I think.
Yeah. Okay. I will start my presentation by briefly recalling some of the data about Roma people in Europe. I'm sorry, I'm having some trouble. I don't know what it is due to. So
I have to switch to the next slide, right?
you should be seeing the slide, Europe's largest ethnic minority.
That's the second slide. If you can click with your mouse onto the slide, maybe it will appear.
Yeah.
Unless you have a slight computer problem at the moment.
I'm not sure why. I see it on my full screen, but I don't know how to.
Can you try to stop sharing and then share again, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe the screen was frozen simply. Happens. Okay, and now share again. Now we're there.
Yeah. And you see it well?
Yes, yes, it's good.
Okay. As you can see from the slide, and as you would be quite well aware, Roma are the largest ethnic minority in Europe. There are about 10 to 20 to 12 million people of Roma living in Europe, and around half of them are EU citizens or residents. Roma communities are present in all EU countries, except for Malta. In Bulgaria, Slovakia, Romania, and Hungary, they account for 7 to 12% to 10% of the total population. And even though Roma are an integral part of Europe's society, many continue to face discrimination, anti-Gypsyism, and social and economic exclusion in their daily lives. And this was actually raised as a challenge by the previous speaker in the intervention. The previous EU framework for national Roma integration strategies up to 2020 focused in particular on reducing social and economic exclusion in the areas of education, employment, health, and housing. And its midterm evaluation did show that a clear EU added value for intervention was there indeed, but we also have to recognize that progress has been limited in many areas. The evaluation showed a clear need for long-term commitment at EU, national, regional, and local levels in order to make more sustainable progress. And let me just highlight a few examples of some areas in which much work still remains to be done. With regard to discrimination, Eurobarometer report from May 2019 showed that 61% of respondents considered anti-Roma discrimination as widespread in their country. This makes actually the Roma group the one with most pervasive discrimination. 2 out of every 5 Roma have experienced discrimination during the last 5 years, and close to 5%, close to half of the 50% of the general population across Europe would feel uncomfortable having Roma as their neighbors. When it comes to social and economic exclusion, the figures are really alarming, with only little progress over the last 10 years. To quote just one example, 4 out of every 5 Roma are at risk of poverty. For Roma children, the figure is even higher, and this corresponds to more than four times the rate of the general population. Let me also underline, and it was mentioned as well by the previous speakers, that the COVID-19 pandemic had also a severe impact on marginalized Roma communities. Overcrowded households, a lack of access to healthcare, clean water, a regular income, or financial resources are just some of the factors increasing their vulnerability. Additionally, the midterm socioeconomic impact of the pandemic puts marginalized Roma communities at risk of sliding further into inequality in the future. So the new EU Roma strategic framework reflects the lessons learned from the implementation of the previous framework, and also from the impacts of the coronavirus pandemic. It was adopted on 7th of October and was launched on 12th of October during a high-level conference organized together with the German Council presidency. On 15 March, the Council adopted a Council recommendation, which, despite being a soft document, soft policy document, it does demonstrate the member states' commitment to address the challenges faced by the Roma communities. And it also sets out concrete measures that can help improve the situation of Roma. While the previous framework focused primarily on social and economic inclusion of marginalized Roma communities, the new Roma strategic framework sets out a comprehensive three-pillar approach for the next 10 years. The social and economic inclusion of Roma is complemented by promoting equality and fostering active participation. And actually, the new framework aims to give all Roma the opportunity to realize their potential and engage in the political, social, economic, and cultural life. I would like to highlight some of the new elements of the new framework that aim to ensure a stronger impact. First, it gives a stronger focus to diversity among Roma, and it aims to ensure that national strategies meet the specific needs of all the different groups among the Roma community. It also reaches out to all Roma, regardless of their socioeconomic status. This approach tries to recognize that all Roma can experience discrimination, including those who do not necessarily suffer from social exclusion. It acknowledges that inclusion is a two-way process in which both sides need to make an effort. This is why the new strategic framework targets not only Roma, but all of society. The new framework combines mainstreaming of Roma inclusion across relevant policy areas, together with targeted measures, which support an effective equal access of Roma to rights and services. In addition, it aims to accommodate differences between EU countries while increasing commitment and accountability. And it does aims to adopt a common but also a differentiated approach among member states. Let me briefly point out the 7 interlinked objectives that are part of the framework. 3 horizontal objectives correspond to the 3-pillar approach. In line with the focus on equality, the framework aims to fight and prevent actually anti-Gypsyism and discrimination. With regards to social and economic inclusion, it aspires to reduce poverty and exclusion, with the ultimate goal of closing the socio-economic gap between Roma and the general population. When it comes to participation, the initiative promotes meaningful Roma participation through empowerment, cooperation, and trust, and it aims to ensure the participation of Roma in all stages of policy process and in all areas of economic and cultural life. Then these horizontal objectives are complemented by 4 sectoral objectives, which recognize that the 4 policy areas of the previous framework continue to be relevant, namely ensuring effective equal access to education, employment, health, and housing. Now, for each of the 7 objectives, the new strategic framework proposes 2 to 3 quantitative headline targets. These targets are associated to indicators, which will allow effective monitoring and measuring of the progress that is achieved. Let me emphasize that these targets express the minimum progress that we hope to achieve by 2030. The long-term goal remains to fully close the gap between Roma and the general population. And let me conclude this overview by outlining the next steps. With this new initiative, the Commission sets out a reformed and strengthened framework for the next 10 years. Over the next months, member states should define their national measures. They should submit their national strategies by next September and also report on their implementation every 2 years, starting from 2023. The Commission will publish regular implementation reports and will also carry out an in-depth midterm evaluation, as well as an ex-post evaluation. And with this, let me conclude by recalling that the new EU Roma strategic framework is part of the Commission President von der Leyen's commitment to a union of equality, and it is the first direct contribution to the implementation of the EU Anti-Racism Action Plan 2020-2025. Thank you. I hope this was short enough. And I would like really to thank once again for the active involvement of everyone in the different processes at EU and national level, and to encourage you to continue the good work that you're doing, because it does make a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a perfect presentation, both in terms of timing and content. Thank you for outlining a very specific plan for the future. I hate to say what I'm about to say, but I have to say it anyways. I think you can ask your questions maybe during the roundtable, which is the second part of today's event, at the sake of now enjoying a 5-minute break. How about this, Magdalena? What do you think of this plan?
Yeah, I think we can go this way. So we will meet here for the roundtable discussion in 5 minutes, which will be basically 2:29, a bit of a funny position. And yeah, let's maybe have a bit of break from the computer, get up, refill your glasses with water, coffee, and then let's see each other after the short break. Thank you very much, all the presenters, for the overview. This will also feed our discussion in the second part of the event, and yeah, thank you for staying for that part as well. All right. So the break is up, and we're heading towards the second part of the event, the roundtable. I had some signals from some of the participants that there's issues with, they experienced problems with the internet connection. So there was an issue with Orlin. I think he's still not here, but we've got Teodora. We also have Miss Makaveva, whom I will introduce in a moment. And there is also Miss Miglena Mihailova. Maybe if I could ask those of you who participate in the roundtable also to come to us and reappear here in the participants list. All right, so basically the roundtable, which I wanted to put in place, the idea basically is to gather your views and hear your views on the particular elements of the strategy, and perhaps then through this view on the local implementation and the way this can be basically put in action in the Bulgarian context. And for this roundtable, we will have, as I said, a number of participants. Ms. Krumova, Teodora Krumova, has already been introduced and took place in the first panel discussion as a program coordinator of AMALIPE. She has a tremendous experience. When I was checking the website, it's just really amazing how many projects and for how long already the organization has been contributing to putting equality in a way in practice, but through a number of training projects for teachers, principals, programs targeting students and trying to prevent dropout. And as I understood, Teodora is really a sort of machine that runs that issue. She's involved in organizing and projecting and planning the project. So welcome, Teodora, and I'm happy that you can stay for the roundtable discussion. We've got Miss Miglena Mihailova, who is a lawyer, and she is based here in Bogojevrad, close to us. She's involved, as I understand, in a number of projects and organizations, Roma Standing Conference, but also the Leader Association, which is basically aiming at developing leadership skills among Roma community members, especially young Roma community members, sort of coaching, empowering it, and also making sure that Roma citizens take a more active role in the life of their communities. We also have Ms. Makaveva, who is the director of the Integral Association. This association, again, is very much committed to the issue of raising the extent of participation of members of Roma community in the social life, with again a super impressive list of projects relating to educational outcomes, but also prevention of hate speech, and a lot of international cooperation projects going on. So unfortunately, I cannot see the other two participants of our roundtable here. Mr. Orlin Orlinov has informed me that his internet in the location that he's currently in will not allow him to participate, and I also don't see Mr. Isaev, but hopefully he will be joining us as the roundtable progresses. So, I mean, the first issue that I wanted to raised during this discussion, when we heard the presentation of Ms. Najdenova, she mentioned indeed that in the previous framework we had goals which were formulated in a very vague manner. Now, in the new framework, there are indeed targets similar to targets that are set in other areas of socioeconomic cooperation across member states. And these targets specifically are to be attained through the state-level policies to their final attainments until 2030. So my question would be, we have a number of them indeed addressed in the area of education. We're talking about the prospect of halving the gap in preschool education participation. There is a goal of halving the proportion of Roma students that attend segregated schools. And there is also this idea that upper secondary education gap should be reduced, but at least 1/3. So 1/3 in this case. So there are concrete numbers here or concrete targets. Do you think they're realistic to be achieved in the Bulgarian context, even though indeed these are supposed to be the minimum conditions, as Ms. Kirova mentioned? Do you think we can get there with the current speeds of change and the policies that have been put in place so far by 2030? Maybe we start with Ms. Krumova, because I also looked up a number of very interesting projects that would feed into the realization of some of these goals by 2030. Do you think we can get there?
I don't want to take much time, but I would just add to what Violeta has said in the first session, that we can achieve the goals that we set. So we jump as high as they ask us to jump. And if we set lower goals, we will achieve lower goals. Regarding completion of education, I think we should make no compromise, especially for primary and secondary education, and we should strive for higher number of Roma continuing into university degrees. Regarding segregation, I think there also should be very high goals, because I know that it's a very tricky topic, and this is the topic where the institutions would like less to be involved, because it's hard, it's painful, and we saw it in the practical cases. For example, like the case in Gabrovo, we saw that it's not a popular decision, especially for the local authorities, also for the national. And if we allow and open the door to set minimized goals, then the institutions will open it higher and probably not do anything. So this is our opinion, and later I can further develop it, but to let space for the others also to.
Right. So in the meantime, maybe I will welcome Mr. Isaev from Trust for Social Achievements and the director of the Education Achievement Department of Trust. Which, Mr. Isaev, we just started with the second question on my list, related to basically the targets which are being set and the extent to which we think, or you think, these goals can be achieved. I mean, I like this idea of Ms. Krumova about jumping as high as you set yourself the threshold. Would you agree that the type of goals that the framework in numerical terms puts forward can be achieved in the Bulgarian context? Is it too little? Is it too ambitious? Perhaps. What do you think?
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. So I really enjoyed the meeting. So because I see people that we are fighting together for years. So and hope the Bulgarian authorities, and especially the representatives of Contact Point, are watching the discussion, as it was their duty to organize such a discussion before the process of organizing the acceptance and approval of this strategy. So before answering your question, I would like to underline a few things. I think I didn't hear if somebody mentioned them. So first of all, we have for first time when the EU framework and the national Roma strategies are their approval is enabling condition to access EU funding. So this is really crucial to mention from one side. But from another side, we have concerns that, and it is not actually, that the Roma topic it's not in the recovery plan through which actually will be distributed the funds coming from European Commission. This recovery plan, how to say, we don't have access to its final version actually. We have to say this openly. So this is second. And the third point regarding the Roma strategy, there are some concerns that are actually addressed by the contact point representatives that this strategy will not be compulsory for the respective ministries. So which is a huge concern, because if we develop educational priority, if the Ministry of Education and Science will not consider the strategy, despite that it's the priority of EU for next 7 years and 10, so then how we can ensure that the targets will be achieved, because the main institution is dealing with education is the Ministry of Education, but not something parallel. The main institution that is dealing with the housing is the Ministry of Regional Development and the local municipalities. So if the responsible authorities, if they are not involved in the process and they are not incorporating in their plans these priorities, for instance, before New Year there was a consultation on the new educational and learning strategy of Bulgaria up to 2030. So if the Roma are not there, if the Roma are not in the housing strategy of Bulgaria generally, so then how we can expect that this situation, what we observe, will not continue, because there is some expectation that there are some parallel funds for Roma integration that somewhere exists, but actually people do not have access to them. The municipalities and other institutions that are responsible to work on these priorities. And then we have to say that there are no such separate funds for Roma. All funds go through the European Commission funds, so that go through the operational programs and so on. And Roma should find place there in the mainstream documents, but not in a formally approved documents that kind of have no cannot oblige in any way because this is the concern shared by the contact point, and we have to consider this as a serious concern. So, and then when we come to the educational priority, where is my area of work? So we actually contributed to the first consultation process of the strategy. Here I would like in brackets to mention that actually the planning of the consultation was not good enough, as it was in the previous accession approval of previous strategy, because it kind of overlapped with December's holidays and so on, the lockdowns, and maybe they considered this, and now I understood that the consultation will be until April 18. It was extended one, so because there was a reaction by non-governmental organizations, so they extended the consultation process. Regarding the targets in education, we contributed, as I already mentioned, with particular recommendations, which are really practical. What I mean, first, we have to consider, and hopefully it will be in the strategy, that we have an issue which is actually impacting all the priorities. The main issue in Bulgaria is the housing issue. Due to the housing, there is a segregation, neighbor segregation. There is a segregation in education. There is a segregation in employment. So, housing issue is impacting all kinds of priorities that are mentioned in the strategy. And we're witnessing that some of EU cohesion funds, projects funded through the EU cohesion policies, are avoiding Roma settlements, Roma neighborhoods. For instance, water pipeline projects implemented by the municipality, building infrastructure, playgrounds, and so on. And we're witnessing how these projects actually, of course, not in all municipalities, but in majority of the cases, these projects somehow avoid Roma settlements. And this is due to the fact that some of these settlements are not in a regulation. And EU funds cannot go for something that is out of regulation, are set in another ways, let's say, so it is illegal, let's say. So, and then this impacts the education, access to labor market, and advancing in higher education, and so on. Regarding the education, we have few major issues. One is already mentioned, the segregation issue. And my concern is that lately Bulgarian authorities say that this process is irreversible. So they say, no, we have this situation, we have to cope with this. But actually, if we take the example of United States, where we had a formal segregation, where there was a legal segregation, they started overcoming this process, and still they have issues, of course, but despite the fact that they had legal segregation, they overcome the educational segregation. But here we had, let's say, legacy from the previous political period of Bulgaria, that these schools were kind of we just had to cope with them during the democracy, during the transition period. They were settled during the communist time, and now it's really difficult to be closed down. What is the solution? Actually, the best solution for many schools, because in some of these schools are studying, they have thousands of students who actually receive really poor quality education. And afterwards, they drop out when they go to primary education, to secondary education, and so on. This is the segregation issue, and I hope that the Bulgarian institutions will change their attitude, and because this process is not irreversible, it could be solved by really taking into account not only by the Ministry of Education, because Ministry of Education says it's a responsibility. We have our program, national program, but it's a responsibility of the municipalities to apply. But the municipalities do not want to apply because they do not want to have tension with non-Roma parents to enroll Roma students in schools where there are majority children and so on. But when because we are in this way, we have to consider that we are risking that after 20 years, 30% of the new labor force will be educated in this kind of circumstances and will receive poor education. So it is a kind of risk also for the economy and all state systems. So, and more precisely about the quality of education, lately started discussion that are the institutions already acknowledge that there is an issue with the Bulgarian language, as it is not a mother tongue for more than 20% of students in Bulgaria, not only Roma. And according to the last published study of PISA, students whose mother tongue is different than the instruction language in the school, they are 3 academic school years behind than their peers who are with mother tongue Bulgarian. So this should be considered, and I hope we as TSA we invest in this priority, and hopefully optimistically, so next 5-6 years we will find some solution, because it's actually when a child enters in a kindergarten or school with low knowledge and skills in Bulgarian language, then it starts lagging behind from the first day, because her peers advancing in different subjects, but it's still advancing in Bulgarian language. So, and then because there is a specific target on secondary education, here we have to mention that the huge inequalities not only in the society but also in the educational system. What is said that actually, according to Bulgarian legislation, the education is free, everybody has access to the education, but actually we know that it's not the case. Even the students who are in obligatory school age up to 7th grade, there are a lot of hidden costs for families, for students who are actually extra burden for communities with the low socio-economical status. And then this is first, and then when it comes to the secondary education, the extra costs become double, because there is no free textbooks, there is no free transportation. Lately, thanks to our advocacy efforts with our partners, ℹ Integro and other colleagues, we managed to ensure that at least in some vocational schools, first desire of the student, the transportation is free. But actually, it's not free if the student is willing to study in a profiled school. I mean, mathematics gymnasium, language gymnasium. So, and the students have to ensure the transportation. And it's not it's really expensive. In some localities, it's a 50-60 euro per month. And then we have the textbook set, which is about 100-150 euro per student. And we have, of course, the daily cost for each student. So actually, it's becoming that actually the education is really expensive, the secondary education. And then we know that we're aware, all people working in the non-governmental sector, that the students, in order to pass successfully the state exams after 4th grade, after 7th grade, after 12th grade, after 10th grade, they should visit private lessons in particular subjects. So that means that the educational system is requiring more than what it could provide to students in their regular classes. So due to that, the families with, let's say, middle and higher socio-economical status, they can afford these private lessons. But the students who are whose families are with lower income, they cannot ensure these lessons. And then from that point, when they have lower marks in these state exams, they cannot access the good schools, the good teachers. And then yeah, and then they, after the graduate secondary education, they couldn't be enrolled in good specialty in university.
So, as I understand, Mr. Isaev, it's basically a mix, or the conditions for having these targets met, or Bulgaria going closer to them, is on one hand sort of procedural. You need, in a way, more coordination between different departments, given that the goals of the strategy span across different areas. And you also need a sort of more involved and better organized consultative process. But then we also have challenges on the very targets to be met. And as I understand, you mentioned the segregation, and you mentioned the sort of relatively high level of students with Bulgarian as the second language, and the hidden costs of secondary, especially secondary education, as the biggest sort of practical challenges, not so much the procedural ones, but the practical ones. We will cover a bit of that, especially the segregation question, in the second round of question, but I might ask our remaining roundtable participants, so Ms. Makavaeva, to what extent would this list be complete from your point of view? Which other aspects you would find especially challenging, given the targets that have been set and the current process in which the strategy is being formed for Bulgaria? What else would you add? What other aspects would you highlight?
Or
it's a long story.
Most of the aspects already were actually catched by the previously speakers. But what I'm concerning actually about the current process of policy making for Roma is again the shifting of the top focus, despite the very clear given recommendations by the European Union. My feeling is that the new strategy for Roma is trying to avoid to define the issues, to call the issues with the names that they should be called. Mm-hmm. What I mean is, for instance, despite our, we insist actually, I mean, we, the NGO representatives to be the focus to be very clear on the anti-Gypsyism, the manifestation of anti-Gypsyism, and equality, provision of equality and participation of Roma. Of course, social inclusion is not at least in the list place, not at all. Social inclusion, social economic inclusion is absolutely important for the Roma who experience poverty. But the great value of the message that comes from the Commission, from the European Union, is that not all Roma this time are recognized, that not all Roma are socially excluded, but all can experience discrimination and specific form of racism, which is called anti-Gypsyism. So my impression is that despite the Bulgarian new strategy mentioned that issue, the focus is not on that issue. The manifestation of anti-Gypsyism is the main, causes for exclusion of Roma, for poverty of Roma. And if this is not in the main policy line, then we will repeat the same efforts that we have done so far, and the results will be very weak. I missed very clear definition, focus on anti-Gypsyism, manifestation of anti-Gypsyism in Bulgarian strategy. I miss it in the educational priority too, to be honest. Even they avoid to use the term segregated education that exists in Bulgaria. Doesn't matter that segregation is not based on legislation. Yeah, yes, legislation forbids the segregation. Legislation forbids the discrimination as well. But it exists as a societal ideology. Actually, people accept that. People agree with that. I will give an example. For instance, the mayor, here someone mentioned about national desegregation program. Great. Mm-hmm. It was available. because I'm working most at local level, at municipal level. Integro is an organization that supports municipalities to design better policies, more effective policies for Roma inclusion. So what I noted is that most of the mayors actually avoided to apply for this national desegregation program because it is not a popular measure, because the local society, the local inhabitants are not willing to support the efforts of the mayors to desegregate Roma children. Even a more concrete example I can bring. In Botivgrad, the mayor, one of the best mayors that I met ever, he decided to close the desegregated school that exists in his municipality, and which is not in the villages. Let's explain that, because sometimes in the villages there are no Bulgarians, young Bulgarians, and no children there. So the segregation there is based on demography, aging. While in the towns and cities there is segregation which is based on ethnicity. So he decided to close school, but he needed the support of local councillors, and local councillors absolutely were against that. They didn't support the effort of the mayor to close that school. So what mayor did, he decided to close at least the local kindergarten, which is segregated, and he doesn't need such a local decision. Decision of the local councillors, and he did it. He did it very easy without any objection from no one. What he did is simply they divided the children from the Roma community to be accepted in all kindergartens on the territory of the municipality. Thus, actually, no objection from the Bulgarian parents that Roma children will attend the schools, the kindergarten. Yes. So when we talk about support is needed for local authorities, for local levels, from national authorities, from the ministries. In the case with the closing the segregated schools at the municipal level, when the municipal councillors are against, but the mayor wants to do that, in this case, actually, the Ministry of Education can really contribute, can help that, can support that efforts. Yes, I would like to say that I miss in this strategy measures. First, I thought already it lacks to acknowledge the existence of anti-Gypsyism, but also more measures to promote multicultural awareness, rising activities and campaigns in school. That missed at this time. What else is measures to promote awareness of Roma cultures, language and history, and measures to foster positive narratives about Roma and Roma role models. But still, as Ognian mentioned, we have the opportunity to provide recommendations, proposals, because the current version of the strategy is published now until 8th of April, by the way. We can provide still recommendations for the improvement of that strategy. What I note now, because my organization stays in the process, and we decided not to leave, not to to reject the invitation for the participation in the consultation of the new strategy. We stayed there. And we have, even from my organization, I have two of my colleagues that are members of the established working groups. Why we did that? We did it because we wanted to use the opportunity. It is open the door now. Why we shouldn't participate? It will be crazy not to participate. But that doesn't mean that they listen to our proposals, that they take them into consideration. So it's good now to all of organizations that actually boycotted the process to give their proposals, to try to influence the design of the strategy. It's very important because I feel lack of expertise, lack of expertise from Roma civil society exactly at that moment. We need these organizations to be on the round table and to contribute with their proposals.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kaplan. So you already mentioned two issues that I wanted to discuss in a bit more detail. The segregation issue and the issue of the discriminatory practices, which are just so rooted that it almost seems like an impossible mission to uproot them. Maybe before we move to discussing them in more detail, I will still ask Ms. Mikhailova to share her opinion about the targets and the current formulation at EU level of this numerical objectives that is, still a progress from what we had before. But yeah, is it realistic? Is it something that can be achieved in Bulgaria given the procedural and practice and practical dimension of the targets?
Thank you very much for the possibility. It's very difficult to speak after all people who discussed before me because they mention a lot of things. First of all, I'd like to thank you for the invitation, and I would like to thank you for your engagement to put this topic because I think now it's a really very crucial moment. It's a moment when the EU framework is discussing strategy for Roma integration in Bulgaria is discussing, but as well, you know that the report of United States is already published, and there is mentioned a lot of things which relate to Roma as well. So it gives me a lot of hopes that so many people and group in Bulgarian society are, how to say, mature and realize that we Roma are very big sources and that we have our place in Bulgarian society and European society actually, because before me you mentioned that, and we know that we are the biggest minority in Europe. When we speak about achievement if I have to answer to your concrete question, my opinion is that all this how to say, number of achievement doesn't have so much matter when we don't have real engagement of the policy and politics in Bulgaria. Vili mentioned before that this framework is very good written, and even we know in history we have a lot of documents, strategy, and we still today speak about what we have to achieve, what is the challenges which Roma community face, and that is because the policies make that European Union and European Commission put some policy which are not, how to say, obligatory, and transfer them to the national state. And national state can implement how they want, and in our case, not so much. For that, I would like to, for that I have this position that the number has matter when we have a real instrument, when the national policy can stay with their, how to say, their efforts and their real implementation of all these number of achievement in the documents we want to have.
Right. So,
actually.
No. Sorry.
When we speak about the education, yes, this is the area when Roma people succeed, you know. It is not enough, of course, but the achievement in education and the potential which we have now, we cannot look like a separate area. Because when we spoke, education is not only to have education. Education is this potential to be, how to say, infiltrating all society, especially in the Bulgarian economy. And if we see the data, we can see that only 7% from Roma people are part of this net coefficient, you know, no learning, no study, no qualification. When we speak about this. So when we speak about education, we have to say that, okay, we need to have education, not only Roma, everybody to contribute to the economy in our country, but as well we have to have the education which is focused for the needs of the labor market and about the new technology actually, because now we live in very dynamic time. You see, everything is now digitalized, so we need more people with skills in this area, you know, to be how to say, equal and qualified participation, not only for Roma. It's me for Bulgarian society, because general education has a lot of, Bulgarian education has a lot of challenges to face totally. Also, when we speak about the education, what is the challenges, we have to say that this crisis of coronavirus show that the system is not ready for digitalizing all students, and especially about Roma students. We see that how many children was not part of the education because they don't have how to say, the tablets, they don't have a phone, they don't have computer, and this automatically make them out of this period. It is not a small period, it is 1 year period where people cannot participate equally than the other about this. The other thing, what I think that is very important, and Lily mentioned, is the discrimination practice in the school. Also, in some of the books in the school, I'm a mother of students who is 6th degree in the school. Just to give you an example, when he was 5th class in the school, in the book of Bulgarian language, yes, there was one story about the good girl, you know, and the bad woman who was gypsy. And then there was analysis of the profile of the good Bulgarian girl and the bad Roma girl, that she's dirty, that she's stealer, that she And you know, this is the things what we have here in Bulgaria. This is the things what Bulgarian children study, and this is the things what nobody react about this, you know. So how you can expect that Roma students can be accepted equally when you legally study this kind of practice and discrimination in the school? How they can be accepted, how the other people can you know, at their home, how they teach their children, you know. And also, it is when we speak about the education and practice in the school, this is the behavior of the teacher. I think that we need to have more and more training, learning, or I don't know what, but teacher to change their attitude to the Roma students. I will give you one other example. Most of the Roma students with who I'm working, they study pedagogy, Bulgarian pedagogy, and they have their obligatory, stage, internship in the school. And when they give back to me what they observe, like opinion and like feedback, they told me, do you know, Maggie, most of our students, Roma students in the school, stay in the last position in the room, you know. And this is the more easy for the teacher, because if this student need more efforts, you know, and more work with him, there it's more easy you to don't put so much attention and to put attention to these people who are going, you know, well, because the system want to see the value of the student generally and don't have this individual, needs of the students. So, how we can have the equal education to this kind of people. And also the other practice, what I see like a mother of the school, that very often we face this phase of this speech of the hate speech, you know. You are gypsy, you are black face, all these kind of things. How these people, how these children are feeling this environment, what is their wishes to go regular at school. When you feel this, not good environment, that you don't find your place in this kind of environment in school. So there it's many, a lot of things to discuss, but maybe not in this, in this session, in this workshop.
Yes. Well, I'm actually thinking, because many of you mentioned indeed anti-Gypsyism and as a prevalent sort of cause and also issue that is not adequately addressed at this time by Bulgarian authorities, not the part of the framework as it should be, or to an extent that it should be. As Ms. Makavaeva said, it's a very complex phenomenon that stretches really to a sort of conscious and unconscious type of behaviors on the part of the Bulgarian majority. So what, especially in this education context, what could be, tackled in the first place? Is it indeed the kind of teachers, principals training, parents, students? What's first, or where to start in order to see the difference or to improve the situation? I mean, maybe I'll start with Ms. Makavaeva with this question. It's how to start, where to start. And
because I need to go at 10 minutes to another meeting. Very briefly, actually, what I wanted to tell is both should be tackled. I mean both, because the professional standard of the teachers really should be improved. About understanding anti-Gypsyism as a specific form of racism doesn't matter. In Bulgaria, we avoided use of the word racism. We translated anti-Gypsyism as anti-Roma attitudes, which covers, by the way, from the sociological point of view, it covers everything that anti-Gypsyism as well address. However, why we didn't mention translated it anti-Roma racism, I didn't understand that. Just to avoid the word racism. So both are
it's clearly racism. It's clearly racism.
Clear racism, yes. So from one point, we should invest a lot in the increasing the professional standards for of the teachers. Definitely, we should review the teaching program and to clean the program for everything that relates to anti-Gypsyism. As Miglena actually gave an example, I know that storytelling, which compares the white princess with the stinky gypsy girl, and that exists still in the school, in the teaching, in the book for third grade, I think it is. And from the other hand, we need to invest in the capacity of Roma community, in the capacity of to empower Roma. We need actually Roma to take them out of the passivity, because they accepted, internalized that stigma, that anti-Gypsyism, and they say no way to change the situation. They don't react. They even cannot recognize the manifestation of anti-Gypsyism. So in this regard, my question, short answer to is yes, we should in both sides, in both aspects, should invest a lot of efforts. And I will leave you because I should go to the other meeting. Sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Kabaeva, for your contributions to both these issues. And I mean, it's indeed this sea of need in this particular case. And I also agree that, yesterday I was just driving and there was this radio announcement of one of the parties. I mean, I don't want to repeat, but it's there, and it's just I think that they can make a political gain on using these stereotypes.
One thing that is very important, sorry, I forgot to mention that. I'm very disappointed of the process of consultation of the national strategy at the moment, because the three horizontal goals, which relates to addressing, then someone mentioned them already, participation, what was
inclusion and equality.
Yes, equality. These three, they should be strengthened more with very clear articulated measures in the strategy. That missed at that moment. And what I'm very disappointed is that under priority, how they call it, как се казва върховенство на закона, бе, забрави го.
Rule of law. Rule of law.
Rule of law. There is a priority rule of law and non-discrimination. And under this priority are much more the, measures that relates to overcome the criminality, to overcome the low culture, citizens culture of Roma, more measures to again modify Roma, not to modify the institutions and the servants. So I really think that we as an NGO sector will react on that now. This is the time. And stay healthy.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kabaeva, and I really hope that this input can still reach the decision makers, because indeed it's really about a concrete strategy that could change and should change this underlining calls for in people's minds and deeds what's going on. So thank you very much for that. As regard to concrete solutions, Mr. Isaev, what would you recommend in terms of tackling anti-Roma racism or anti-Gypsyism, as it is, where to shoot in the first place, especially in the education area?
I think a lot of measures are targeting and policies are targeting Roma children, Roma families, Roma communities. I think what we lack is that we don't have measures that are targeting non-Roma parents, non-Roma children, non-Roma communities, because we have reason to celebrate achievements that Roma community achieved for last 10 years, which is obvious from the report that we conducted with our partners. So there is a significant increase in the rate of graduation from secondary education, from universities, and so on. There is an increase in the employment rate, in the income of the families. And however, what we still lack proper opportunities for the people that somehow manage to succeed. We don't have proper representation in public institutions. But to the question, this is it's a holistic. The approach should be holistic. So we cannot target first. We cannot target first one issue and then another. So it should go together. And this is the main challenge, maybe for the institutions, because what Ms. Macavevia said, that obviously we're lacking how to say expertise, but not only in the Roma non-governmental sector, but including the state representatives and people that are working in particular institutions, and awareness on the topic. So all this should go together, improving the ability and the skills of the teacher to create welcoming environment, positive environment, considering the culture of each student and respecting the community values that is coming the child from and the families. So this is the inclusive education, yeah. And as already mentioned, Roma are missing from the textbooks in Bulgarian, from Bulgarian literature, from Bulgarian history, from Bulgarian geography and economy books. So despite that, lately many economical sectors, the jobs are occupied by Roma, because in small localities, the main workers are Roma. So all these facts should be promoted in order to increase the awareness of the general population that actually Roma have their achievements regarding education. They make efforts, because Roma in Europe, they succeed. They manage to integrate, they visit schools, because the state institutions in Western Europe, they stick to the rules. Because here, when it comes to Roma, there is doubt if the law should be applied, if it is their tradition, if it is their way of life, if the education is value for the community or not. So, and we shouldn't tolerate such a double standards when it's about applying the mainstream, not only mainstream restrictive measures, but also positive measures, supportive measures. So, but we really have to work on promotion of inclusion, because we lack such a promotion, communicational promotion. I mean, that should be targeting Bulgarian parents, Turkish parents, because at the end of the day, after school, these people they work together, they live together, but actually in the official system, through the mainstream policies, what we witness, actually they do not meet, they do not speak to each other, and they get aware of each other after school. So we have to work on this. So we have to prioritize. The state should prioritize this, and I'm really looking forward to cooperate with the state. But when I mean by state, I mean that we need real high-level political engagement, as it is in European, but it is in the agenda of the European Commission. So it should be the same here in Bulgaria, in all member states, in the agenda of high-level political parties that these topics stays in their priorities, but not somewhere in an administrative frame, just because the EU is requiring. Unfortunately, during these consultations, we didn't face any high-level political engagement, because we communicate through with the people who are actually administering administratively leading the process, but no any high-level political commitment, because the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister Tomislav Donchev, should be leading this process as a person responsible for the policy from Bulgarian side before European Commission.
Right. So it's indeed sort of I see it as a kind of two-dimensional process, as you say. Target of the policies should not only be Roma community, but also the outside, the non-Roma community, so that indeed the communication can and need to change the way people think. And this, however, will not take place if the highest decision makers or the real decision makers will also not take this cause as an important one, you know. Ms. Violeta Najdenova, you raised your hand. I'm not sure, would you like to contribute to the discussion or comments?
Yes. Yes, I wanted actually to add something. There are a couple of very good papers on anti-Gypsyism, if you want to look at, which were created from OSF, but also from the European Roma Grassroots Organization in Brussels, that explain what is anti-Gypsyism, why it is important to recognize anti-Gypsyism as a specific form of racism, why we should start from there. And it has actually a number of recommendations which governments need to adopt. And I will advise you to look at these papers. I can send them to you if you need. But to add to this debate, to all the previous speakers, it's important to understand that these stereotypes and prejudice, as you know, if they're not tackled, we cannot talk about any successful policy implementation and funding. I think this has been proven, and here colleagues know very well of many failed projects on housing, on education. Teodoro mentioned the white flight. Once desegregation starts and school is Roma kids go to so-called no Roma school. It's just I mean, imagine yourself being a Roma kid going to a school where you don't learn about your own history, where you come from, who are you, but you're called Gypsy, you're called names, Mango, etc. I mean, what kind of self-confidence? How are you growing as a citizen in a country where they make you feel lesser from this age, which is very, very important, because you start your life with a trauma. This is officially a trauma that you're going through, and a lot of people cannot address it even at adult age. So Roma is just completely out of any history books, mainstream history books, education books. It's just, and if they're there, as Miglena mentioned, they're in this way. And it's so tragic that Roma arts, culture, and history, this is what I mentioned, is not there. It's just a bit unbelievable that Roma are so much present now in policies and discussions and debates at political level and now in academia, but this problem still exists. I want to finish with the fact that I commend you that you organized this conference. It's just pity that, again, we are talking to ourselves, that the civil society is talking like one each other, agreeing on things that have been there forever. With civil society, it's great that we had the Commission representative speaking, and it's great that this debate is provoked by academic institutions such as AUBG. I will highly recommend that you continue, if you can, and engage more speakers in the future from regional level, from school inspectorates, even parents, just in order to understand, what's their perspective as well, and why they think as they are, not just Roma parents, but also non-Roma parents. And we are happy to help and support this in any way we can. Thank you.
If I can maybe say something, I mean, indeed, I am extremely happy that we could do this event. And as we had discussed in our previous conversations with Ognan, with the exchange, he said, yeah, we need this meeting. But in the end, despite indeed my efforts to have government representatives first on panel, then actually, in the audience, we did not manage to get it, and that's really sad, and it really shows to what extent the issue that Ognan mentioned, this idea of kind of taking this seriously by people who are real decision makers, it's difficult. And I think if we don't have that, then we cannot have the Bulgarian strategy succeeding. I mean, somebody has to really be ready to put these issues in practice, and I think that's very difficult. So, I very much thank you for the contributions, and I'm very happy that we could have indeed the Commission representatives, that we had Violeta, that we have in a way promising spots within the framework at EU level, some more tangible, real targets, but yeah, we still have to have the will on the part of the authorities to actually have this really put in practice in a real program. Violeta still wanted to say something. Maybe I'll just...
Yes, sorry, there's so much coming, because we always look through European perspective and what we can draw as lessons learned. One thing which is new in Brussels is that we have the so-called equality task force that was set up by the Commission. How wonderful it would be if the Bulgarian government set up also equality task force. Why? Because this equality task force and the Commission is looking through the lenses of, okay, we have Roma now and we have this EU Roma framework, but let's see how Roma can be mainstreamed through all the entire equality policies of the European Commission, funding, legislation. And I think that would be a good idea if you could recommend such a thing, that the Bulgarian government adopts similar equality task force. And why not headed by Roma? First time, because we don't have a lot of Roma in sort of decision-making positions in the government. Why not being one idea that Roma can be the head of such an equality task force? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Violeta. Maybe I give voice to Miglena, because she also raised her hand, and I guess we will have to wrap up the discussion, given that we are running out of time.
Thank you, Magdalena. Just, just final few sentences. All these kind of things, when we speak it here, and focusing about education, the number when we have to celebrate our achievement now is because of the effort of the all NGO activists, actually. And I would like to congratulate all activists and all NGO organizations and all Roma people who put their effort, their energy, Today we to say that we have this achievement. Unfortunately, here in this process, in this achievement, we see the less contribution to our government. But what I want to say as a final thoughts is that we Roma are fighters. We are people, even today, with the manifesto of Roma standing conference, I didn't know if you see. It showed a very big wishes of Roma community for new policy, for new change. This manifesto has 40,000 people who support this idea for new policy. This is the demands of Roma community. and there is include also all these main topic which we want to change. So we are going to fight. We are going to put our efforts, and we want actually this new policy to be together with demands of the politician in Bulgaria for all new policy, for all these new documents to become a real, a real changing life of the people for whom they have to be prepared.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miglena, for these final words. Ognan, may I also ask you to say a final couple of sentences?
Yeah, usually we Roma have this habit when we try to speak, we try to cover everything because we don't know when we will have chance to speak again. I joke, yeah. So I just recall one very important study that is done in the Netherlands. It's about the self-view. Based on the self-view, especially the children, they can plan their future. The families can dream for their children. And regarding the anti-Gypsyism, so when there is such a high-level anti-Gypsyism in Bulgaria, because anti-Gypsyism is existing as anti-Semitism is existing. So, and we shouldn't look for a proper word that should sound nice, but also in calm, not not disturbing anyone. But the truth is that actually anti-Gypsyism is existing. It's everywhere. It's in the public transport. It's in the schools. It's in the workplace. It's on. So, but then I have to confess that Bulgaria has really good legislation. I mean, it's in line with all EU requirements and all contracts that Bulgarians signed before in line with Council of Europe, with European Commission, Organization for Security and Cooperation, and so on. But the issue is when it's coming to apply this legislation, because what we witness that even in the judgments there are double standards when it comes to Roma, when it comes to non-Roma. So it's when we want Roma to succeed, to be fully equipped good citizens, then we should treat them equally. Because in my opinion, what ordinary Roma want, every ordinary Bulgarian or Turkish want. So they do not want anything different what the others actually want. They deserve what the others deserve. So because also it's really underestimated the Roma contribution in building the Bulgarian economy and all kind of system, especially in the infrastructure. Because when we speak about history, we should mention that during the communist time, majority of the people that built the roads, the buildings, the public houses, they were from minorities. And not only all these contributions should be mentioned, but as we find out every time that we're missing such lessons that actually show our contribution, but not only as people who are users of different kind of social systems, state systems, benefits, and so on. So thank you very much for giving a chance to speak out.
Thank you very much. I'm just thinking, paraphrasing Miglena, I mean, I also would really like this fighting spirit to continue, but I would like it to continue not against or despite the political will, but in line with it, to actually have this strategy put in a concrete terms. And I also agree that the root cause of most of the issues is indeed the anti-Gypsyism or the racism that we still see very much rooted. So this is really the primary kind of area that policies should indeed be organized to fight. But again, for this we don't need only the the interested fighters, we also need the political will, but also we need the fighters to become also participants of the political and given when I was checking the website of the Roma Standing Conference with the candidates of Roma origin in the parties, that's really the way to go as well. So it's on all the fronts. Also, this fund should be marking the presence of a sizable minority which is out there and not, just sneaking somewhere. These are people who have the right to have their place within the society to which they are members. And perhaps also through this political channel, if indeed these elections were to bring change, that would be indeed a sort of towards more participation, so that you actually also see the political arena not only taking this seriously, but really being also part of what they are, part of the society. So I wish and I keep my fingers crossed for that. And I'm also very, very happy that we could meet here and with really great experts and amazing activists that every day do an incredible job. And I hope that this type of meetings will also in the future feature decision makers and those who will indeed implement the strategy and put it into not only the paper but in practice. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for the audience. Thank you, Violeta, for your contribution. And it would be really great to I look up the task force idea. It's very, very interesting.